Welcome, everyone. This presentation is on attendance and reporting student conflict from the Issaquah School District. My name is Lorna Gilmore, and I work in the Equity and Family Partnership Department as a family partnership specialist. My department and I work to help families understand and navigate schools because most of our families are families that we work with are families that might have some barrier to accessing information, such as being culturally diverse or linguistically diverse, or just not have a good understanding or new to the school system.
And hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Cho, and I'm the Assistant Director of Compliance, and I work at the district office. And one of my roles is the district truancy officer, as well as the HIB officer. So I'm excited to be here to answer questions and share information with all of you.
Stacey, can you tell me a little bit about what is compliance?
Basically, my role is we have different state laws, and then we have district regulations that match those laws, and then our procedures that we follow. So we help educate our building principals to make sure that they are following our regulations and procedures. And I'm also there to help answer questions if parents are trying to understand their rights and how to get their needs met.
Okay. And so Stacy is also the assistant director that oversees all the harassment, intimidation, and bullying reports. And so that's why it was very important to have her co-present this with me, since she's in charge of both of the big items that we're presenting, or the two big items we're presenting today. So the purpose of tonight's event is to provide guidance for families on procedures around reporting student conflicts or mean behavior or HIB. In family partnership, my liaisons and I very often hear from families that there's an issue. Very often, I, in equity, hear from parents that they're so frustrated that this problem has been happening for a while and nothing's being done. And so I help families and guide them as to what they can do to support their child, because no one wants to see their child struggling. And so this presentation is to make sure we're giving a general information session so all parents understand what to do when their child is experiencing some kind of conflict or problem, how to help their child through this, and how to partner with the school through this. For the attendance side, we're also providing information regarding policies, uh, uh, provide definitions around some of this, and also providing tips on how to partner with the school around both attendance issues and HIB or conflict issues. So we started with this slide because one of the things in talking to parents and to school staff, we found out that the thing is, one of the biggest things we see is very often parents call mean behavior as bullying. So that is definitely something that we see. So one of the things we have to educate people is what is bullying, what is mean behavior, what could be rude behavior, what can be conflicts. So many kids experience or participate in mean behavior. Some students, we're finding that in general, in all levels, from kindergarten to high school, very often students are othering kids in some way or the other. And it's interesting to see because it's sometimes across race. Sometimes we have Indian kids calling making fun of other Indian kids around their accent, or because of, something they're doing or the clothing they're wearing. Same thing for different kids who are in Chinese families. Some kids might tease other Chinese kids teasing other Chinese kids. So it doesn't matter it could be happening within your race, it could be happening across races. We have people being picked on based on gender, sexual identification, ability, so many different things. So it's the behavior we're seeing being rude, conflict, mean, bullying, everything is going across harassment, intimidation across uh, different groups. And we all know that this needs to be addressed and reported to an adult in the school or to the school so that we're aware of what's going on. So parents need to be aware of we realize in talking to parents and schools that sometimes parents need to be aware of children's behavior so we can partner together with them. Stacey, you want to talk about the bullets?
Yeah, we were just saying that sometimes if a behavior is being reported and the school reaches out to both parents, um, just listening to what's going on, that might be the first time that you've ever been contacted and the behavior of your child's being discussed. So we really do have the same goal in mind, that we want the mean behavior to stop. And so just partnering together, refrain from, it's not a blame, it's just trying to understand what's going on, why was that the reaction? And when we can align together, when the parents have consistent expectations, the same as the school, and we partner together, that is usually really successful.
And so you're going to see that one of the main themes through this presentation is how can schools and families partner and share and listen to each other's reports and hear each other out. So we're going to start with talking about the big definitions. So in schools, very often we see different types of behaviors happening. Sometimes the behavior is just rude. A kid is just rude to another, says something, does something, burps, is in somebody's space, jumping, cutting a line. And so those behaviors that we consider to be rude, what we usually do, or the school does, or tries to teach, is to encourage students to use their words um, to stop the other kid's behavior. So in elementary school, especially, a lot of teaching is done on how to react to certain behavior. And honestly, some of that behaviors are how to react to rude behavior, ignore, walk away, maybe tell someone. And then you also have the mean behavior where someone might be purposely saying or doing something to hurt someone. And usually they might do it once or usually twice. And it could be criticizing a person's appearance, intelligence, anything that, again, this is othering kids. And very often it's done intentionally, often motivated by anger or it could be cruelty. But the idea is maybe mean behavior could be regretted later. It could be a response to a spontaneous event. But the appropriate response is to share with an adult at school to get additional support. So in elementary school, they work through different SEL lessons with the teacher and the counselor to kind of work through how to respond. But again, remember that the child can always report, and we always talk about how to report. Bullying. So bullying is one of the bigger ones. So this one we're going to talk a lot more in detail about because it is intentionally aggressive behavior repeated over time involving an imbalance of power. So we're going to talk more about that. But there's different responses to bullying. And again, since this is a big part of our presentation, we'll talk about that soon. And then knowing the definition for conflict, which is disagreement or argument in which both sides express their views. So in elementary school, very often the school counselor is called in when students are having conflicts on how to negotiate, how to work on resolution, peer resolution, and problem solving skills. So this is also the way we in schools define these kinds of behaviors and in trying to understand what is going on, and that'll help us figure out how to respond to the student, how to solve the problem. So defining the behavior or even trying to figure out what is going on is definitely one of the first steps. And this information is found on the district website. And one of the things is very often parents don't know where to go to get information. And under safety and security, so if you go under safety concerns, under safety and security, there's a link for HIV resources and reporting. And those definitions, if you keep on scrolling down, is under this bullet. Okay, so I'll be coming back to this page often as we give you information. So what can parents do to support students when another child is being mean, rude, bullying there, or is there some kind of conflict? So the first one is to identify and try to figure out what is happening. Is it a mean behavior, rude, conflict, or bullying? Because that way you can start by being the first teacher and helping to give your child tools on how to address the situation. So conflict resolution is a big aspect of education in all grade levels. And the big hope is for parents and school to be on the same page. So very often the starting of how to deal with this behavior is the hope that you and your child are talking about it to figure out what's going on. Do we try to counsel the child on ignoring, moving away, reporting, how to deal with it? Listen for understanding. For conflict, you can counsel your child to have them get support of a school counselor to help mediate or work out the disagreement. So very often school counsel will call the kids involved and try to figure out and teach them problem solving skills and conflict resolution skills. For rude behavior, you might be helping them and teaching them how to advocate for themselves, to say stop, how to say it in a loud voice. So you're coaching them on how to respond or how to involve staff as needed if they need to work on intervening, or if they don't have the ability or they need support, because everyone needs help sometimes in responding to that behavior. For mean behavior, we need to also work with the students on problem solving and to identify a trusted adult to get the support. It could be an administrator, it could be a classroom teacher, it could be a para educator. And so giving the students tools to help them address this. And so for mean behavior and bullying behavior, sometimes it might be something big enough that this child cannot work on their own through this. And so that's where you definitely have to be involved as a parent in helping your child through this. So if your child is experiencing some kind of bullying or mean behavior, conflict, or any of these behaviors, it's always nice to find out if there were witnesses or other students around, so that when you're reporting the incident, you can give all of that information. You and your child can report anonymously, and there's going to be a link later on to show you how to report it anonymously, so that supportive measures will be offered in response, and supportive measures are offered in response to all reports. However, disciplinary action on the alleged aggressor can only be done on non-confidential reports. We'll talk about that more. One of the biggest things I hear from parents when they come and talk to me or the liaisons about this behavior is they're really worried about retaliation. They're worried that the teacher will get angry at them. They worry that the school principal or administrator will not like them or the family or think of them poorly. They're worried that the other child is going to continue and the bullying will get, or mean behavior will get worse. So it's important to consider that, because I myself have been reminded by my children that snitches get stitches, and that is still a thing that kids will say when you talk to them. And so, how do we counsel them around that? Because their safety and their mental well being is key, and retaliation should not be a factor in this. And also, that the district has policies to address any kind of retaliatory behavior. And finally, one of the biggest things we see is that sometimes kids struggle and they don't report, or they may report and the parent says, oh, just ignore them, just kind of, maybe it's not being addressed. And what we see sometimes is when kids are continuing to struggle with this and they're not reporting at all, it sometimes gets worse, and it's because it's not being resolved. I've also seen cases where parents sometimes gets really frustrated and will say, this has been going on for so long, but nothing has been done about it. And so it's important that we always report as many times as we can when we see this problem happening. So as I said earlier, the mean behavior we're seeing in school can be teasing about weight, teasing about teeth, even hair, touching hair, pulling hair, skin color, religion, issues on religion. And we're not, the bullying or mean behavior we're seeing is not, being mean because you're Muslim or Jewish. Sometimes it's even for Christian students. Sometimes it's for Hindu students. So it's any kind of othering is happening, can happen based on the child. Ableism. Ableism is also another way that kids are mean to each other and what they're saying to each other. It could be a physical or learning disabled child might experience this. Sexual identity, hearing homophobic slurs, accents, all of that can be done. So, is happening in our schools. So talk to your child to get guidance if needed, if the action is mean or does it rise to the level of an HIV. Because even if it happens once, depending on the action, it can be HIV or it may need to be formally reported. So we're aware and we're watching out for this kind of behavior. Or because sometimes the more we know as a school, the more we can do to kind of mitigate or to prevent the situation before it gets worse. And also remember, and this is a big one through the course of the presentation, every incident is unique because many circumstances or factors are involved. And so every situation is handled slightly differently. So very often we have parents that will say, well, this happened to my child and it happened to this other child, but my child got punished and that child did not get punished. So it's really hard. And that's one of the things we tell parents, please don't compare different incidences because there are so many nuances in that incident that you might not be aware of because we are not at liberty to share. So comparing incidents is really hard because unless you're the principal, because you might not have all the facts involved in that situation. So next one we have is, sorry, here we go. Definitions.
Yes, that's me. Sorry, I was responding to trying to chat at the same time. So our HIB defined. So if you would like more information, part of our regulation on the website has this information, but we thought it would be important to talk about harassment, bullying, and intimidation. They are three different things all looped together into one procedure or regulation. But harassment refers to any malicious act which causes harm to any person's physical well-being. It can be discriminatory harassment, malicious harassment, or sexual harassment. And then when we think of bullying, that refers to unwanted aggressive behavior by another student or group of students that involves an observed or perceived power imbalance, is repeated multiple times or highly likely to be repeated. Bullying may inflict harm on the targeted student, including physical harm or educational harm. And bullying can also occur through technology called electronic bully or cyberbullying. And when we talk about intimidation, that refers to an implied or overt threat of physical violence. So the Washington State has a legal definition that we also follow, and that you will see in our findings letters and on our website and as part of the regulation as well. And it states that harassment, intimidation, or bullying means any intentional electronic, written, verbal, or physical act when it physically harms a student or damages the student's property or has the effect of substantially interfering with the student's education, or is so severe, persistent, or pervasive that it creates an intimidating and threatening educational environment, or has the effect of substantially disrupting the orderly operation of the school. So that is a mouthful. It is big and broad. And again, every situation is unique. We look at what's happening, what's the impact that the allegation is having on the student. When and why to report HIB, we really look at patterns of behavior. So students have used tools and strategies to try to address it. Like we said, they're using their words. They're saying, stop, I don't like that, leave me alone. And maybe the student's continuously doing that or isn't changing the behavior. Sometimes with power indifference, we look at that. If there are multiple students addressing one student, or maybe they are afraid that if they say something, they're going to hurt them more. So we really do want to talk about what is being said and what is the impact that that student is feeling. Is it intentional? We talk about that. Was this a response to some kind of spontaneous event? I mean, misbehavior happens. We don't want any maybe physical harm being done, but what was happening right before that? What was the behavior going on? Was it just a response, which is not appropriate? We'll say that in our letters. While this didn't meet the definition of HIB, this is still not appropriate behavior and is being addressed just through discipline in a different way. And we look at the goal of the aggressor. We talk about them. Were they intentionally trying to cause harm or hurt or humiliate a student? What was the intent behind their action? And then what was the impact that it had on the student? If you're unsure, we really do encourage you to work with the school team, reach out to the principal, share what's going on, and they can look into the allegation and investigate or interview students to try to gather what were the facts, what could we find to be true or not, and then talk about next steps. But our end goal, we all have the same end goal. We want our students to feel safe and welcomed and supported at school. So you may hear a lot when they come home and share with you their experience at school. And we need you to share that, but also recognize that there might be a second side to the story, and we need to kind of figure out what happened and how we can move forward together.
Oh, sorry. Before I move to the next slide, I just want to say that again, this one will take you, once you find the links on the website, this one will take you to this link. And this is, remember, mainly it's a resource. And so it'll take you to links so you know how to report. But there are many places that this is put on or linked on this presentation, because one of the biggest questions families very often come to me and ask is, I don't know how to report. How can I report? Can you help me? And so that's one of the reasons we're doing this presentation. So on this next slide, we're going to talk about who and how to report incidents. So as you report, and remember what Stacy said in the last slide, is the goal of the school is to try to partner with you and try to figure out what's going on. And we do need to have this information and these details from you so we can try to figure out what's going on. So focus on the actions, facts. So when I was a dean, one of the biggest things that the person would tell me, my principal and district admin, was get facts, get the actions that's going on so we can understand what's going on, and then talk to the kids to get some of the background knowledge and the reason, the rationale for the action and the behavior. So work with the school to identify the problems and possible solutions. So the ISD webpage, that's the way you can link to all of these resources. And it is very important to always document. So this is the number one thing I tell parents. If something is happening, document what is happening and then email it to school. So even if your child is handling it, you might want to just send a letter to the principal and the teacher saying, hey, my child had this slur called out to her as she was walking. She was able to ignore it and move on, but I just want to let you know that she's feeling unsafe or icked out because this is unacceptable behavior she's experiencing from her classmates, right? Because sometimes what happens is then parents say, this is happening and an ongoing, but then the school's like, what are you talking about? No one has ever said this to us, that kids are saying these kinds of slurs to certain people, right? And so sending a report like that is very helpful so that they kind of getting an understanding of what problems might be happening. And when incidents of hate and mean behavior it's not addressed, it tends to escalate and the students suffer and the school cannot address the issue. And so the problem just builds. One of the things, the sad thing I heard, I remember when I was doing a listening session at one of the high schools, was kids were saying that they heard the N-word were used often at their school. And we asked, like, did you report? They're like, no, because I was the only one who heard it, and I didn't think anyone would listen to me. And that felt so powerless, right? And they were fatalistic and just thinking this was not going to be addressed. So they may not have had any evidence, but I would encourage you to help your child to report, because maybe through that they feel empowered and they might see some presentation or some kind of change, because we do want to address that, because if school's not a welcoming environment, that is so problematic for our children. If it's a first time incident, an email with details to a school staff, I would always CC the principal. If it's, definitely escalated, like it's on the verge of being harassment or bullying. And if it's a classroom teacher, especially elementary school, I would also include the classroom teacher if it's a student in the class or someone the child might be encountering often. If the incident is happening in the lunch, in the hallway, in the recess, definitely send an email to the school administrator. I'm going to tell you, in middle and high school, most of the incidents I hear from parents, their kids are reporting that these incidents are happening in the hallways during lunchtime or on the bus, and they're not feeling like they have enough evidence to report it. So again, I would strongly talk to a parent and the child and say, is this something you're comfortable to just let them to report? Because remember, in most places there are cameras, and they use the cameras as they look into incidents, right? So they might not be able to hear what was said in some instances. Uh, and so we need to see what's going on and get that information, and look into that. So if a problem does not stop, send another email to all school staff involved. And what the parent is now doing is the parent is documenting that it is a pattern of behavior. Students remember, this is one of the school policies. A student may report directly to any staff member when they actually at any point, but definitely when this harassment, intimidation, or bullying is taking place. And for parents, again, what I strongly recommend for all parents is written documentation is honestly the key to reporting. So what I also tell them is, if you want to call and have a conversation with the principal, that's fine. Call, let the principal know, and after having the conversation in the meeting, follow up with a written letter as to what happened. And
Um,
remember,
sorry.
school
There was
administrator would.
another question, like what if they email the principal and they didn't get a response that first time of reporting? Sometimes it might take a day, depending on what's going on in the building, but I just encourage you to you could send a follow-up saying, I didn't hear from you, or you could call and leave a message. But if you're not getting a response, you'll have my contact information also at the end of this, and I can kind of help check in with the building to see what's going on.
Yes. And we address the timeline. So usually as a school staff member and a teacher, it's in my contract that I need to respond within 48 school days, 48 hours, so 2 school days, not weekends or holidays, to an email. And it might just be like, I acknowledge that I received that, let me look into it, and so forth, but just say, hey, just checking that you got my email. And then usually you give them, a grace day or so, but that is the expectation. So the different reports. So we have different reports on different ways to report, and Stacy is going to go over that.
So yes, and I know that we showed you that website before, and there are links there to our different methods of reporting. But sometimes people will want to share information anonymously. They just want the building principal to know this is going on. They may not want their name tied to it. It's just an awareness piece. So we do have a method through our website where you can submit just an anonymous tip. No discipline can be assigned just from that tip alone. We need to, the principals may take that information and maybe do a little bit more supervision in that area or check in with the student just to see what's going on. But really it's just you informing the building something that's happening, but you don't want your name tied to anything. Informally reporting, sometimes you can share a concern, and really the school's responsibility is to check in with you, listen to your response or allegation, what's going on. And sometimes they're able to informally handle the situation. They'll talk about what supportive measures may be needed so that your student feels safe and supported coming to school. There's a lot of different responses. Sometimes the older students will have, no contact agreements that this happened, but students have agreed to just leave each other alone. Sometimes in the elementary, they may have different kind of areas in the lunchroom or at recess or in the classroom, maybe not sitting next to each other. And really the goal is to have the behavior stop. So the principal will be talking with both families and both students to try to understand what is needed. But if you're not satisfied with that, there is definitely a formal way of reporting the HIB, and we have a form that you can complete and fill out. And that will then start a more timeline formalized process of what an investigation will look like. And I think we have more details
Yes, sorry.
now.
Stacy, do you
Sorry.
want me to show the formal report?
Sure. The
I just want to show the links, what the different reports look like. So this is the formal report, and this is for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And so it gives a big section on the bottom over here to, and this section, I'm going to very often say, put all your documentation in here. So you can copy and paste any screenshots, any handwritten stuff, anything sent to you. There's lots of space to give details, also the names of other people who might be witnesses, and so forth. So that's one. This informal reporting, it's different. It's a Qualtrics form, and then you can put your information in here. Multiple steps.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is just a way that you can share a little bit about what's going on, and then you will get a response back from an administrator to get more information. A lot of families think that that informal form means they submitted the HIB form for a formal investigation. So Lorna showed you that link below what this form
This is the formal HIB form.
and this will, you can share details. You'll still be communicated with to get more information, but this is where then we would start an investigation.
The third way you can do a reports is anonymous, and Stacy showed that. I just want to show you what that one looks like. And that one is, again, it's kind of is in the safety tips area. Submit a safety concern. And so it's also, it goes to the school that you're mentioning and a district's director of safety and security. So they see that. And so that's more for an anonymous. You don't have to include your name. And even in the other one, you don't necessarily have to put your name in it. But if you don't put your name on it, as Stacy said, it's different if it's reported anonymously versus if it's reported with your name. Okay. And Stacy, did you have any questions on this page?
No, I think the next one is what happens after you file
Yes.
a report.
So this is the one in 2 days that parent had asked that they
Yes.
had not received.
Yeah, so once you submit the HIB form, the school district has 2 days to acknowledge that they received that document. And we will check with you. The principal should be reaching out if you didn't indicate if this is going to be anonymous, a confidential report, or non-confidential report. So if it's non-confidential, that means that we are able to do an investigation. The student that's named as the alleged aggressor has a right to know what they're being accused of as we go through this investigation for due process. So if additional information is needed, the principal will set up a time with you to discuss any additional details that you could share. What happens is they will interview both parties separately. The students are not brought together. We really do separate everybody. Any witnesses that have information will be interviewed. There will be discussions with both families separately. Really, at that time, even during an investigation, what supportive measures can we put in place right now while the investigation is occurring? And I think we've got examples of what those are in a little bit. And then the building principal will review prior complaints, any video footage. And as a parent, you are allowed to come into the principal's office and view if video footage is found. You can't have a copy of it. That's through a public records request. But sometimes it's helpful to come into the office and see if there is a video of what occurred so that you can kind of understand why decisions were made. And then you will get updated every 5 days about the investigation. Our hope is that we can complete investigations within 5 school days. Sometimes that can't happen if students are sick or we're unable to get to an interview. So if that happens, you will be notified that the investigation is ongoing, and they will send you the findings letter upon completion. So once they're done with an investigation, you will receive a written response explaining what the allegation was, what was found during the investigation, if this did violate our HIB regulation or not, and then what the school is doing for supportive measures or as a response. The family filing the complaint will not get to see a detailed list of the discipline or consequences of the alleged aggressor. We don't share the discipline of other students. That's always a really common question, is parents want to know what happened to the other student and why are they not expelled. And so we won't go into the detail of the discipline of another student for FERPA. We just want to protect the rights of everybody. But you will get a letter, and if you are the family that filed the complaint and the school came back saying that it was not a violation of HIB, the parent who filed the complaint has a right to appeal that decision. And I think we talk about that in a little bit of what that looks like to appeal a decision. If
It's
you
not
are
on the,
named, oh,
it's not on the next slide, so it'll
oh,
be, just keep
so
that in mind. Yeah.
okay. So, and that's on our district website, and you would contact me you have 5 days after receiving that letter to reach out to me, and my contact will be in that findings letter. And then you would just let us know that you would like to appeal, and then that is the superintendent will designate one of the executive directors to listen to that appeal. So,
And Stacy, you get all the HIBs that are sent to schools, right? You get a copy of that.
yeah, at the district office, I do keep a record of all of the HIB investigations that have happened. If it is found to be HIB or not, how many have been appealed. We do keep that data. I also, if a HIB form is filled out, but the school handles it informally, Maybe they've met with the families and everyone agrees that this is a good resolution and they don't want to go through the formal investigation. I also get a copy of the resolution that was informally handled, and I keep track of that too.
Thank you, Stacy. Just one more thing I'm going to say. Stacy talked about the fact that parents are not involved and not connected. Very often in my work, and the liaisons and I, the parents always ask us, can we just please meet with the parents because of the two parents, especially in elementary school when there's conflict, bullying, or problems. Parents want to very often meet with the other parent to work it out. And the thing is, we do not connect parents at all. And so that is just not something the school system, the school system, or most US school systems do, public school systems for sure. So that's not an option at all. With the students, sometimes it's possible, depending on the student, to bring them together to work on conflict resolution or to work on, plans and work that out, especially in elementary school, because the thing is, if we don't resolve what's going on, if it's a conflict or mean behavior, those kids are going to be seeing each other for the next 7 years or more. So we try, since it's a school, to try to solve problems before kids get to middle and high school. If it's a problem we think we can address through education, through conflict resolution skills and conversations, and so forth. So this next slide talks about behaviors and disciplinary actions at schools. It's very complex. I'm not going to go into it, but not complex, but just lots of details. But what I want to say is in the student handbook of all the schools, this information is listed in there. Okay. So it is in the student handbook. And one of the things it tells you is that for the first offense, usually in most instances, they start with education and restoration if it's deemed uh, a good idea. For targeted hate speech, of course, you're going to go straight to discipline and then education. So it depends, again, every consequence depends on the type of action. And then we really, since we are a school, try to lean a lot on education and restorative practices, but definitely in reteaching uh, as part of our discipline process, education, loss of privileges sometimes. Over here, this is elementary school, so it talks about conferences with an admin or parent for part of it. It is possible that could be out of school suspension or expulsion in certain cases, but in every case, it's different. In high school, it looks similar to this, and it again depends on the type of action. So the disciplinary response to reports is going to vary, and Stacy's going to take this.
Yeah, so it really is unique to every situation, but the goal is to have a consequence that's going to help the student change their misbehavior and address their needs. So lots of different things are considered if it's their first offense, the type of offense, the severity, the impact that it had, the developmental age of the student. So we're trying to, as principals in the building, they're looking at a lot of different factors when they're determining discipline. And again, we're not going to share the discipline of another student. I'm going to say that over and over again. We really are focusing on your child and what your child needs, and won't be talking about discipline of others.
And another thing is, especially in middle and high school, I see this, I hear this a lot, where parents are like, he did this, why hasn't he been expelled? He should be expelled right away, or why is he not missing school or something? But it depends on the action. Also depends if it's a first offense. And then sometimes we'll have two kids doing the same offense, and then one kid, it'll seem like it was treated differently than the other kid. And so it really goes back to what have they done before. Also, certain actions are not the same. So if they're skipping school versus being mean or some kind of harassment behavior, that's two different kinds of actions. So their consequences are going to be different. So it's very different based on what they are. There's kind of like a rubric almost of what they have to follow. in trying to come up with consequences for students' misbehavior and how to resolve it. So this uniqueness thing, I know it can be frustrating to parents because they want to see some kind of consequence meant out and child having some kind of consequence. But one, we can't tell you what it is, and two, it might be very different than what you are expecting or hoping for. So
Sometimes it's helpful to know what are possible consequences. I think while we can't say specifics in the moment, just knowing that conversations are happening, families are involved, a lot of education of and conversation and reteaching of student expectations. I think there's a lot of resources that now we're offering as far as getting students support with their mental health, social emotional supports, like we mentioned before, no contact agreements, or maybe a plan for separation at recess or lunch. Sometimes in the older grades, we have different walking paths to just try to eliminate running into each other if we can. Some students maybe have alternate passing time, like they're allowed to leave a couple minutes early to not be a part of the hallway. When all the students are around, maybe they would rather just kind of walk in a quieter setting. Um,
And if
not,
your child is being impacted, you will know. So if your child, there's a student safety plan, and so there's something that your child has to do, you will know the actions or the things that are going to impact your child. For example, if your child, because of this action, is going to be leaving class 5 minutes earlier or walking with someone else, then you'll know that. But if there's an action plan on the other student or other students, you're not going to know about that. Okay. So that's the hard part because sometimes it can seem like nothing was done, but it could be that there was a recess plan or a lunchtime plan put in place that you might not be aware of because it did not impact your child, but it is happening. So those are kinds of things that are invisible to the parent when they made the report, and that's hard because you don't know what is being done, and that's because you're only being informed of what kind of safety plan your child is that's going to impact your child. And Washington state discipline laws have changed quite a bit, and so it's based on that we are doing what we are doing. So I think it's safe to say when I was younger in school or even 15 years ago, very often kids were sent, in my case, in middle school to the BLC room, behavior learning room. So it was kids were sent out of class a lot. And now the state has really cut down and pushed back on that and said that students are not allowed to miss education time and they have this right for education. So it is a balance between making sure that students need what they get what they're needing to graduate, to that we're using teaching tools to make sure we're addressing that since we are a school. And so removing school students from a classroom, especially, is really something that the school and the state is trying to push us away from, unless it's an extreme situation or circumstances. Stacy, would you agree about that?
yeah, that would not be
How
the
long
best.
ago were the rules changed? Do you remember?
I don't know. I can find that
No,
out.
no, no. I'm just trying to figure out because I'm just trying to think about when I was a dean at IMS versus Clark, and now it feels like it's gotten even tighter for keeping students in the classroom. Okay. And so then the question is, what do you do? What do you do as parents? And so the most important thing for you as a parent is to call schools and partner with them. So when something is going on, you're going to send an email, some kind of communication. But if it's a conversation, because very often you kind of want to have this conversation with the principal. And what I hear from the liaisons and also from parents, they're very upset and they go directly to the school and in the office and they're very upset and they're demanding them to talk to the principal. And sometimes the principal is doing an observation or the principal is doing something else, they might be in a meeting. And so it's really important to call ahead and schedule an appointment with an administrator so that we can have this heart to heart where both of you are in a space to be listening and taking in what's happening. But that is also gives you time to put all of the information written in an email so you have this documented, and keeping calm. And really, I talked to a parent just the other day, and she said, she talks very quietly, and she just tries to go to the keep stick with the facts and talking about, well, how can we partner? Because that's her goal. She believes that the school and she are there to partner and work together. And I love that as to what she was saying, because that's my hope. My hope is that the parent through this can see the school as a partner in trying to help their child to keep their child safe. So recognize that there may be a different side to the story than what is being shared with you at home. And honestly, I'm going to say since the advent of the camera, it has been helpful because it really shows a lot more as to what was happening before the incident happened, when the incident was happening. And it's not perfect. You're not going to catch everything on camera, obviously, but it has been surprising what all we can see in schools using our cameras, I should say. And so also hearing from the school some of the other parts that might have been happening. So how do we also use this information and continued collaboration? Because you may, again, disagree with what the principal tells you. And so then what's the next step? And say, hey, so both of us are disagreeing in what just happened. What do we do now? How do we work to continuously keep my child safe? Because this is what I think is happening, and my child saying, this is what you think is happening, and now they're not feeling safe. So, what can we do to create a safety plan? So, to do something. And so, at that point, the school and you might talk about options. What would you like to see? And I always encourage parents to let the school know what would they like to see happen in these cases. The school might not be able to do everything about that, but it's also always a good starting point, right? To kind of start collaborating and negotiating and talking about, okay, what does this partnership look like? And as Stacy said, and I think both of us are saying, we cannot share anything about the incident with the parent, especially names, details, and connect parents together. Okay. So, as a parent, one of the big things is to constantly do check ins after an incident with your child. You're not going to check in and say, was this so and so being mean to you? Like, we're not continuously traumatizing our child, but you're like, hey, how is it going on? What did you do? Who did you sit for lunch? Anything exciting happen? What was your favorite part of today? What was your least favorite part of today? So, doing some kind of check in to get information from your child. Focus on the outcome and the well being of your child through this. If the issue is still a concern, send an email to the administrator with the details of the incident. Ask One of the suggestions I suggest for parents is to ask for a weekly check in with a student by a supportive personnel, someone that they trust. It could be a counselor, it could be an AP or a dean, a trusted staff member like a teacher. Sometimes it's a para educator, if it's an elementary child at the recess or lunchroom. But a check-in just so that they have building that connection, that sense of belonging and enjoyment of school because they like this person. It might be a supportive measure and a person that they feel they can trust and talk to about incidents going on at the school. Uh, or you might be talking with the administrator as to this did not work out. Now what? What do we do now? Because we have had yet another concern being reported by my child.
When we talk about
Stacey.
so yeah. So this one's hard. Cyberbullying and online incidents. I mean, as the more technology is coming out and more apps are being used, I think just as parents and awareness of what apps your kids are using, and maybe encourage them to, not use those apps. There's a lot of instructions with each of these different programs on how to report accounts or block accounts. Sometimes it's just a conversation with your kids about um, who are they giving their access to. And, we've had to have conversations. I mean, my son, he's in 6th grade and he does not have a phone. I think I'm one of the only parents who, he doesn't have his own cell phone. He is allowed to use my phone to text. But we just talk about group chats and do you know all of the people that are on that group chat, or are there numbers there that you don't know? And how do you encourage your children to leave a group chat if it's not healthy for them, if it's the content is not something that aligns with your family values? I think you can have a conversation with them. I think it's really hard for them to turn it off on their own. So as parents, we need to come and have some rules and expectations around the use of tech. I think it's really helpful if you have kids turn in their phones at night, focusing on sleep, and there's nothing good that happens in the middle of the night if they're on their tech. So, well, that's a generalization, so I shouldn't say that, but
Snapchat and Instagram, honestly, in talking to parents, whenever I'm working with parents on something going on, very often the cyberbullying is happening on some kind of online app, such as Snapchat or Instagram, two of the most popular. And it's kind of scary because when kids are playing video games, very often they're using Discord, and some of the things kids are saying to each other and about other kids is very negative on Discord. So be aware of those things because usually when things come to a head, it's usually they've accumulated screenshots and information from those social media apps. So you can take pictures of that and send it to the school. You can take screenshots of that as you're documenting. But it's really also important to note that if the messaging is being sent outside school hours and how it's impacting the school is different because some of this might be about reporting to the police. And so, is this something that we report to the school, or is this something we report to the school and the police? So when it comes to cyberbullying, some of that is really there are a lot of gray areas where some of it might be some things that you have to report to the police. Now, one of the big ones is inappropriate photos. If there's any, especially in middle and high school or older elementary children, sometimes kids might send them or share with them some inappropriate photos, some body parts, and those photos you never want to send to the school. You might want to file a police report on that, okay, and report what happened. So you can inform the school so they're aware of it, but these are things that we report to the police. So what I've noticed is very often parents, because this is another student, they don't think or realize that they have the right to report this kind of behavior with the police. But social media apps are for 13 and above. So things like this are happening with children under 13. Definitely things that you can be reporting, things that are inappropriate and bullying or harassment that's happening off school hours, off time, after school in the evenings, at nighttime. That's all can be documented and reported. So what I'm saying is in this one, it could be a partnership between both the school and the police department for these instances. Also knowing how to block numbers, how to check students' phones, how to teach your kids how to get out of group chats. Even as a elementary school dean, I would see that children would be added to chats that they didn't even know that they were in, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm in this chat and they're saying this and there are 20 kids and it's just numbers. I don't even know who half these kids are. And that's where you have conversations with them because unfortunately, many kids now have technology and they don't know how to properly use the technology. We do a great job teaching kids technology and computers at school, and using the internet and using research and all of that stuff. But I think the phone usage is a place that there's a little bit of a gap and a void, especially below the age of 13, because technically, I don't think the schools do much with that, since we discourage kids from using phones in schools. It's thought to be a parent education matter. Same thing with incidents off campus. Some schools, especially in high schools or middle schools, they notice that there are fights happening between students outside the school boundary. Maybe it's in certain neighborhoods, community centers, parks. And so when these things are happening off campus, it's really important for families to know that they have the right to report such incidents and altercations to the police, because sometimes the parents will come to the school and say, my children had a fight, blah, 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 there. And the school's like, sorry, this is not school property. We can't address this issue. So know your rights and who all are your resources and support systems when it's not happening on school property or during the school times.
I
Stacey, do you
still
want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important if there was some type of incident in the community to reach out and let your principal or counselor know, because if that kind of trickles into the school setting, even though there isn't discipline that we can enforce, we can still work with your student. And if they aren't feeling safe, we can talk about supportive measures for them while they're at school, and making sure they know who to report if something does happen on campus. But I think I don't want to say that I think you should let everybody or admin or a counselor know if there's conflict, and they may need some support at school. But if you're asking the principal to discipline a child for something that happened in a neighborhood, that's where kind of we don't have jurisdiction there. And that's when you would maybe contact police.
So it's multiple partners in the situation and support networks for your child. It's what can parts that the school can do and parts that the police can do in these instances. So our last slide on this topic. So thank you very much for bearing with us on information on problems, student conflict, and problem solving is part of this learning process. And Stacey, you want to take
Yeah, I
this?
I just wanted to say that we are a school and our kids are learning and growing, and they are going through all the stages of developing, and they have different skill sets at different ages, and they're gonna make mistakes. That's why we're here, to just come together and talk about the choice they made, and hopefully give them tools so that they don't make that in the future. But we are going to navigate. Sometimes there are consequences that will happen, but we still welcome the students to school. It doesn't define a person. We want everyone to feel safe and supported. And again, a lot of this, there's a resource to connect to talking maybe to an outside professional about mental health, even for your child, or even as parents, if you are overwhelmed and you're not quite sure what to do or how to parent some of the children have challenging behaviors. There's resources for you as well. So I just wanted to let you know that we will share with you what we can, and Care Solace is a partnership this year that helps connect family to resources.
Yes, and so hopefully one of the key things you heard through this presentation on reporting student conflict is, one, send an email, communicate hopefully with the school administrator and let them know what's going on, because the schools can't do anything if they don't know. And if you're not sure this is something you should report, you can always ask advice from a school counselor or the school, one of the liaisons, to say, hey, this is happening. I'm not sure what to do and what this process looks like. We can definitely help you. But at no point would we ever discourage you or just not say, just go straight to the school principal and ask them about this. Okay, so hopefully we are all trying to work together as a community to keep our students safe. Okay, so we are now going on to our next section on attendance. So this session is on attendance and some information regarding the attendance policies and procedures at the Issaquah